morning, Americas. What a beautiful day we're having. For those of you who watch the Arthropod Agenda regularly, you know the great success of last week's interview with Tara Tsitsi on the human sleeping sickness. For this week's agenda, I thought I would shift the attention to one of the most prevalent parasitic diseases today, malaria. Malaria is a mosquito-borne disease caused by a parasite, and who better to interview than the vector for malaria parasites herself, Anna Anophelis. Welcome, Anna.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here.
Well, I thought we could start off today with a brief introduction on microorganisms and vectors. Do you think you can tell us a little bit about each one?
Of course. When we talk about microorganisms, we are generally referring to bacteria, fungi, parasites, or any organism that is typically too small to be seen by the naked human eye. Vectors are referring to the organisms such as myself, who carry those infectious microorganisms from an original host to another susceptible host such as a human. The infectious agent has the potential to infect the vector, but luckily I don't have to worry about that with malaria, Tom.
Interesting. So after you pick up this disease, you spread it from one human to the next.
Well, yes, to put it simply, but it's a bit more complicated than that.
Please explain.
Well, when the malaria parasites enter the human, they invade the liver. As they grow and multiply, they produce thousands of haploid forms called merozoites in each liver cell. They then venture out into the bloodstream where they destruct red blood cells and leave behind thousands of infected cells. Some of these merozoite-infected cells stop asexually replicating and develop into gametocytes, which are the male and female sexual forms of the parasite. The symptoms of malaria that humans notice at this point are caused by these blood-stage parasites. Now, as you know, I'm always looking for my next blood meal from a tasty human. If I were to go out right now and get my blood meal from a malaria-infected person, I could very well ingest one of these gametocytes, and it would then start a different cycle of multiplication inside of me.
So now that we know how these parasites function inside of a human host and how you can contract the disease, tell us, how do you then pass it to another human being?
Well, those parasites can be found as sporozoites in my salivary glands after about 10 to 18 days. So when I go to feed on another human's blood, I simultaneously inject them with my sporozoite-ridden saliva. This starts a new infection and the process starts over again, with the sporozoites invading the human's liver cells.
Fascinating. Now, is this something humans everywhere should be concerned about?
I guess it depends on what you mean by concerned. Humans everywhere should be concerned about malaria because it's one of the most prevalent parasitic diseases today and it's responsible for the deaths of over 1 million people each year. But do humans everywhere need to be concerned about contracting this disease? No, not necessarily, but 41% of the world's population of human beings live in areas where malaria is transmitted.
Which areas are you referring to?
Well, malaria can be found worldwide, but the parasites are predominantly found in regions of Africa, Asia, and Latin America.
Do all cases of malaria result in death?
Not necessarily, Tom. You see, there are 4 different species of malaria parasites that can infect humans, and the severity of the symptoms that humans encounter can be largely dependent on the species of the parasite they are infected with. Symptoms can range from a mild fever and chills to more serious complications that could end in death.
4 species of parasites? What are they?
Plasmodium falciparum, P. vivax, P. ovale, and P. malariae. The first one that I mentioned, Plasmodium falciparum, is the most dangerous and is responsible for the most deaths and serious complications. P. vivax may be considered the most prevalent of the 4 species due to the population densities in the areas of which it is found. P. ovale is similar to P. vivax, but it is less frequently encountered. And finally, the last one that I mentioned, Plasmodium malariae, is a much less dangerous form of the parasite and is less prevalent as well. It can cause a chronic, lifelong infection in humans, but it is less life-threatening compared to the other species. It is also different from the rest of the species in that it has a 3-day cycle in which humans experience fevers instead of the typical 2-day cycle.
I think I would prefer to avoid all of those parasites, Anna. What advice do you have for humans who feel the same way as I do?
Well, Tom, I could tell humans to use insecticide-treated bed nets, but that makes it near impossible for me to get my dinner, so why don't we just keep that between you and me? But humans can take other protective measures by taking antimalarial drugs or avoiding mosquito bites. Some areas like North America have been very successful at avoiding the disease. That is largely due to the climate, however, and the protective measures taken, such as using screens at doors and windows and using air conditioning.
Well, it looks like that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Anna, for meeting with me today to discuss this week's agenda. And thank you to all of my loyal viewers. Make sure to tune in next week as I meet with Mr. Bug Zapper to discuss next week's agenda. Don't go towards the light!